Hi everyone, my name is Jessie Daniels and I'm the program coordinator for the online BBA here at the University of Georgia. We thank you so much for attending with us and learning a little bit more about how to balance all of the busy things that you have going on in your life. We are honored to have our special guest today, Kiz Adams. She is the coordinator for work-life balance here at the University of Georgia, and she's very familiar with the type of student that online BBA students may be and online students are in general, and she will be very happy to tell you about some strategies for really your lifestyle to be able to juggle, again, all of the responsibilities that you have, plus also planning the responsibility if you haven't started already or if you are starting this semester of adding school to that busy menagerie of life. So we thank you, Kiz, so much for attending. I do want to mention one thing about the online BBA. If you are not already enrolled in the online BBA, or if you're not already in contact with me, please make sure that you do take the time to fill out one of our online BBA readiness checks. What we want to do is make sure that we go over your transfer credit to see if you do need any additional courses before you apply to UGA. We want to keep that money in your pocket. I think also saving money and working smarter, not harder, is a good strategy for some time management and juggling your work-life balance. So without any further ado, we're going to go ahead and pass this over to Kiz, and thank you so much, Kiz, for being here.
Yes, thank you, Jessie. I'm happy to be here, and I respect and commend you for this challenge that you're taking on or you're considering taking on. It's difficult. Going back to school and juggling work and other responsibilities as well as school is a difficult challenge, but it is very doable. I'm living proof that it's doable. I have juggled family and school and work what seems like all my life. I have 4 children, 2 of whom were born while I was going to law school. So my first one, my first year, my second one, my second year, and we were really worried about this trend because law school is a 3-year program. After I got out of law school, I've spent most of my career in faculty or administrative positions here at Georgia. And I've developed some strategies that have worked for me. And what I hope today is that some of these will prove useful to you and they will help you achieve your goals. But before we get started on the nuts and bolts of these strategies, I just want to take a few minutes to talk about a very critical first step. And, oops, I'm trying to advance my, all right, we'll just do it like that. And that's establishing and maintaining your motivation and commitment. 2 things that you're going to need a lot of if you're going to complete this program. You know, any time management system or any time management guru that you read, they will always talk about establishing your goals. Okay? That's the first step in any time management system. You can't possibly begin to decide how to use your time wisely if you don't know what it is that you're trying to accomplish. And for our limited purpose of this webinar, I imagine that the goal here is to enroll and complete in this online BBA program. But it's not just about stating the goal or identifying what the goal is. The key is the why behind that goal. Why is that goal important to you at this time? And you have to connect that goal to something that you value. Okay? A goal, especially a long-term goal that may take years to achieve, that may require major sacrifices on your part, must be tied into something that's of value to you, that gives your life meaning. You know, one of the things I like about working at an institution of higher education is that if you want to know something about anything, you can find an expert on this campus. You know, if you want to know about the mating habits of the African beetle. I guarantee you there's somebody on this campus who knows about that topic. So when I wanted to learn about what is it that gives human life meaning, what is valuable to us, I went and spoke with the experts in our College of Philosophy, Psychology, Social Work, Consumer and Family Sciences, and I posed that question to them. And in general, what they said was that values are, for humans, they're basically the same for everyone, and they rarely change over the course of your life. Now, what's important to you may be different at any time of your life. If you're young, single, starting out in your career, your job may take importance. If you're mid-career or you have young children, then what's important to you shifts maybe to family and to children. But your values basically stay the same, and they're really two sides of the same coin. So what gives you joy or enjoyment, that gives our life meaning, and generally serving your purpose or achieving things or a sense of achievement gives you joy. You get satisfaction in feeling like you are reaching your potential. So what are your goal, if it's to enroll or complete in this program, what is it that you value about that particular goal? Okay, so perhaps it is joy or enjoyment. Perhaps you truly enjoy the subject matter of business and finance or marketing. Or perhaps you have a natural talent for accounting. And so what that gives you completing this program, you feel like you're reaching your potential, that you're serving your purpose because you've been given this sort of natural talent for this. You know, perhaps it's not even the degree itself, but this degree is going to give you the knowledge or the credentials or the expertise to pursue something else that gives you joy or satisfaction. You know, maybe you want to be an entrepreneur and you want to start a business and something that you have a real passion about, and you need this degree in order to do that. It may be that, you know, the degree, again, it helps you with your career or your ability to get promoted, and this is going to give you a sense of achievement. You have to simply tie it to something bigger. And I caution you, if this goal, if this degree is just a box you're checking off, so maybe your employer said that you had to do this, or someone else, your parents or your partner said you needed to do this, it's going to be hard to continue when the going gets tough, as it will. It'll be hard to keep your motivation up and your commitment up. So part of it's just a matter of perspective. If this is something you need for your job and you can't get an advancement without it, well, then why you value it is not because your employer said it, but because you value achievement, okay, or purpose. So that's a real key step before you get into anything. And you always ought to keep that in mind. And I would even write it down somewhere. So when the days get long, or you're now approaching, you know, 2 or 3 years into this program, you get that out and you look at it again and you remind yourself, here's why I am doing this. This is why it's important to me. Then all the little tasks that you need to achieve that goal, enrolling for this class, doing this project or whatever, those are all the little small things that begin to wear on you and begin to get hard to do. You always know they're tied into something bigger, okay? Because all these little things that you'll have to accomplish in order to accomplish the larger goal, is going to take a lot of your time. So this is time management. So let's talk a little bit about time. Okay. How much time do you really have? I don't really, the 24-hour time block is not really a practical measure of time. What I like looking at is a week. And there are 168 hours in a week. Okay, this is what you have to deal with. Now, if you work full-time, 40 hours of that week is devoted to work, and that leaves you just 128 hours. Okay. Now, if you typically take 2 courses, you have 6 hours worth of classes. The general rule of thumb is for every 1 hour in class, you should plan on studying or preparing 2 to 2.5 hours for every 1 hour that you're in class. So if we kind of apply that, you have at least 12 hours of study or prep per week for those courses. Okay, that takes you down to 110 hours. Now, when you add in 56 hours of sleep, and that's 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, which you might be laughing at this point, saying, yeah, that's never going to happen. I'll talk about later on in the program why it's really important to pay attention to that. But if you subtract out that, okay, so that's hours you're not going to have, you're down to 54 hours. So let's look at those totals. You have 58 hours of your 168 hours a week devoted to work and school, and you have 54 hours for everything else in your life. Now, look at those two numbers. Okay? I get it when people say, I don't have enough time, but you only have 4 hours less to do everything else in your life, and that's working 40 hours a week, you know, and taking 2 courses. Those numbers are not that far off, okay? It's not a lot of time, but it's enough time if you're intentional about it. Now, most people, this is a recent statistic, 61% of Americans say that they do not have the time to do what they need to do. So I just told you that there is time if you're intentional about it. The problem, I think, and I think there's a disconnect between the way people feel and the reality, is that they're trying to manage time. And really, you can't manage time. We call it time management, but that's kind of a misnomer. What you're doing is you're managing tasks within the time that you have. Time is finite and it's limited, as you just saw. There's only 168 hours in a week. If you spend an hour of your time managing your email inbox, you can't go back and get that hour and do anything else with it. Okay? You also can't do something else while you're managing your inbox. You can't commute to work while you're managing your inbox. I realize that some people try to do that with disastrous results. So you need some type of system for managing tasks. And what I recommend, and this has worked very well for me, is to have a weekly schedule. Now, I'm going to take you through how you kind of work with the schedule. You only do this once. Generally, when you add some type of major responsibility to your life, for instance, like going back to school, maybe you would do it again to this detail at the end of the semester when it's crunch time and you have exams or projects that you have to do. But if you try to do this to this degree every single week, it would probably drive you crazy. And you really don't need to, as I'll show you in just a minute. But what you're trying to do here is create what would my ideal week look like? And when I was preparing this webinar, I thought, okay, I'm going to do one of these charts, and I'm just going to put the picture of a beach and a sunset and say, okay, this is what I would do with my ideal week. But I'm not that good at PowerPoint, and I couldn't make it happen. But we're talking about a typical ideal week. So the first thing you're going to do when you fill this out is you're going to put in what I call the hardscape. Okay. These are things that have a specific fixed time that you have no control over. So, of course, the first thing that you would think about putting down here is your work schedule. Okay, if you work Monday through Friday, a typical 8 to 5 type of job. Okay. And I'm blocking out there a lunchtime because you'll see in a minute, I recommend that you actually do take a lunch break. You would also put on here anything that happens at work on a weekly or bi-weekly basis that, again, has a set time that you don't have anything that you have no control over. Like, every Monday at 10 o'clock, you have a staff meeting. You know that you're not going to be doing anything else and cannot do anything else. You won't be anywhere else except in that staff meeting from 10 to 11. Or say you're in charge of payroll at your work, and every Thursday you've got to pull the time cards and you're doing payroll, and it takes you the entire afternoon to do that. Okay? Your class schedule you should put on here because you don't have any control over your class time. I'm assuming. I have to confess, when I went to school, there was no such thing as online school. So I'm not sure if you have a class time where you are meeting online at a certain time, or can you just tune in at any time? But regardless, either one of those things, you want to put it at a set time. And if it is something where you just catch something online, like a program that you go through, you want to look at your schedule and say, okay, every Monday at 6 o'clock is when I'm going to go through this. Okay, so that's your class schedule on there because that's something fixed, hardscape that you can't move. Okay, then any other things that you are responsible for or that you do that, again, have a fixed time that you have no control over. For example, if you take kids to school, and so it's from 7 to 8, that's what you're doing. You're getting them in the car and you're dropping them off to school, and then you're getting to work. That's time you do not have. And this can be non-work related stuff too. So if you go to church every Sunday and then go out to dinner with your friends or family, okay, mark that on here because that's a fixed time and time you do not have. Okay. I would also suggest you put on here what time do you go to sleep and what time do you wake up. Okay. And if this is all over the board, if you go to sleep at all different times, you wake up at all different times, that I think that might be a part of a time management problem. In general, and I'll talk about this at the end when I talk about derailers, it is best energy-wise, cognitive-wise, that you have a set regular schedule, that you go to bed at the same time and you wake up at the same time. And I hate to tell you this, but probably sleeping in on the weekends, if you're going back to school online, may not happen for a while. I always tell folks, going to bed early is the grown-up way of sleeping in. So once you have all this filled out with things that are fixed, what you're looking for is where are my pockets of free time here. Okay? This is what you have to play with. Okay. Part of time management is sort of realizing, the reality of the situation. What time do I have? What time do I not have? Okay. So these are open times where I can fill in things. So for instance, I just said that the general recommendation is for every hour that you're in class, you have 2 hours of study or prep. Okay, so that's 12 hours in a week. So you look here at your empty times and say, okay, where am I going to find those 12 hours? Okay, so if you had class on Wednesdays, okay, 2 classes, one 4 to 5 and this one down here to 6 and 7. Okay, here's 4 hours right here that you could say, okay, from 7 to 9, I'm going to devote to study and prep for class Y. And from 9 to 11, I'm going to devote to class X. Okay? If that doesn't work for you, and you say, okay, I have an hour here from 7 to 8, but then I have other commitments, or I have children, I'm getting to bed, or whatever, where can I find another hour? You look up here and it's like, well, I have an hour for lunch. Well, what you may be doing is eating your lunch, but prepping for this class during that hour. Now remember, what this is, it's your ideal week. Okay, so this won't always happen every single week, but if you could have your way, here's how you would do it. What you want to try to do is establish a habit. Okay, so if you have, a big expanse of time here on Sunday, okay, you might say, okay, I'm going to take, 2 or 3 hours or 4 hours here to prep for some of these classes that are at the beginning of the week, especially this class X here, because all I've got is one empty hour that I would have to prep for that, and I can't use that hour because I'm going home then, or I'm picking up kids then, or whatever it is. All right, so how your week would flow is every Sunday evening is your study time. Okay, and I'll talk about it in a minute. Sort of getting buy-in with people. So your family or your partners or whatever. No, okay, Sunday afternoons they're pretty much booked for study time, and this is about establishing good habits. Okay, because our body and our brain likes habits. It's a very efficient way for it to perform tasks. So you can make a good habit as well as a bad habit. So if your habit is Tuesday evening, I'm always prepping for class Y and X, you're going to be primed for that. Every Tuesday evening, if you do this week after week after week in the semester, you're going to know, okay, I'm going to need my books. I'm going to need this for this. You won't be going, oh, well, I don't have this that I need to prepare for class or whatever. You'll have it because every Tuesday is when you're going to prepare for that. Now, remember I said when I gave those totals that 58 hours of your 160-hour week was pretty much going to be taken up with work and school. So you have those 54 hours for everything else. What you need to do is figure, now I said 54 hours, that's enough time. It's not a lot of time, and you're going to have to be very intentional and planful about that time. So you make 2 lists. On the first list, you put all the time-consuming tasks and responsibilities, other than work and school. You got those covered, on your schedule. But all those other things that take your time that you're responsible for. And here I put just some examples of what it is that I'm talking about. Okay? That's list 1. Then you will come over here on the second list. You want to write down all the activities and interests that you enjoy doing and that renew you. Most of the time when people get into a time crunch, these are the things that go, because these things are so pressing and have to be done. These things are like, people look at them as, oh, well, I want to do that, but I don't have to do that. So I need to go over here and do the things I have to do. Well, you need to change your mindset about that. Because what these things do over here in this second list is that they renew you and they energize you. And you're going to need all that energy to do all the other tasks that you need to do. Okay? So these are almost a have to. You need that in order to engage, maintain your motivation, your commitment, and your energy for school and work and all the other things that you're in charge of. Going back to school is definitely not the time to drop these off. However, you're probably going to have some trade-offs. Okay? Remember, time is finite. You're going to have to choose among these several things. Okay? So look at so let's go back. Okay? So when you look at these pockets of time here, plan in, okay? Pick one or two of the activities from that list one, the chores or whatever. Plan in, typically, when would I do it? If you're in charge of your yard and mowing the grass or whatever, so Saturday mornings, maybe they're devoted for, yard cleanup, whatever. Maybe Saturday nights or Friday evenings, this long spans of time are then devoted. Pick something off your list number 2. That's devoted to spending time with family and friends to renew you so that you have energy and motivation and engagement to do all the studying you're going to be doing on Sunday evening. And when you're with your friends or family on Friday, it's not bugging you in the back of your mind. You're thinking, oh, I got so much I got to do next week. I got to read that. I got to look that up. I got to write that report. I got to do this homework or whatever. It will destroy the pleasure that you normally would have by spending time with your friends or whatever on Friday evenings. Well, if you've done this, you don't have to worry about that because on Friday, look, I know Sunday, I have 4 hours blocked off where I'm going to do all that stuff. I don't have to worry about that. I've already got that planned in. And you know that during the week because you sort of established that as a habit. Look for, when you're looking at these things that you're trying to plug in, when you're looking over here at list number 1, all right, do only those things that really only you can do. And sometimes it's very hard for people to give up things, or they think they're the only ones that can do something, and generally that's not. And again, like I said, there's going to have to be trade-offs. There's going to have to be choices that are made because you can see, pretty much in black and white what time you have and what time you don't have. So the first thing you look when you're looking over here at list 1, is there anything that I can delegate to someone else? Can someone else really do the grocery shopping? Can you negotiate with partners or friends or family to switch off? Like if you take the kids to school every day, okay, do you really have to do that every day? Can somebody else take them some days? Can they ride the bus some days? Okay. Somebody else could do that and be willing to switch off. Can you carpool? Can you source out things? Okay. Yard work. If you say didn't go out to eat, okay, maybe 2 or 3 times a month, and you took that money you saved by eating in rather than going out, would you have enough money to be able to pay somebody to come and do your yard work, or cleaning, somebody to come to your house and clean it every couple of weeks? Okay, so you may be able, and look for ways where you can source out. And sometimes squeezing your budget, I know it's hard, you're working, you're going back to school, but you look hard at your budget, there may be ways to squeeze out some money to outsource some of these things. Try to find 2-for-1 deals. Okay, so I don't mean this like at the grocery store. This is, can you do two things at one time? Now, I'm going to talk about multitasking in a minute, but by this I mean if spending time with friends and loved ones is something that you enjoy and that really feeds you and gives you enjoyment and gives you energy and renews you, and you like to exercise, you want to run, you want to walk. All right, can you combine those two? Can you meet a friend and go for a walk? I have a good friend, and every other week we meet at, I hate to say, 5:30 in the morning, but that's the time we found to go for a run. And we catch up with each other, and we're exercising those things that we do, that we enjoy at the same time. Okay. If you have a long commute, okay, if you have a work commute and you like reading books, can you listen to a book on tape while you're commuting or a podcast? If you have to do a project for school, can you make it work related in some way? So you will be doing a school project, but you'll also be doing a work project, one in the same. It may just be a matter, you might have to change your perspective. For instance, yard work, something you're in charge of. Well, you like spending time outdoors, okay? And this, you may think, well, what I'm really thinking is, going and hiking in the at a park or something like that. Well, as I said, there may be choices, there may be trade-offs. Could you instead perhaps embrace your yard work as your time of enjoyment for spending time outdoors? Or if you take the kids to school and you like spending time with them, well, depending on how long it is, a drive to the school, that is time with your kids. Make it count. And if you've done this time schedule and you realize that your time is limited, you're more likely to make it count instead of just turning on the radio and everybody just sort of zoning out, making it a meaningful time. Now, some tips for success. Get buy-in from all stakeholders. By that I mean your family, your coworkers, if you're going to have to be leaving early to get a class or something like that, your boss, they all need to be on board and they all need to know why this is important to you. Create good habits and routines. This goes back to what I was saying. You can create a good habit just as well as a bad habit. If you have a habit, if you look at your schedule and you realize, all right, the only time for me to exercise is 5 o'clock in the morning, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, then you make it a habit. Just every Monday, you wake up at 5, you go do your thing. You do that week after week after week. I promise you, it gets easier because you've created it as a habit and a routine. If you're in charge of the grocery shopping, all right, just make it, go to grocery shopping the same day every week. Okay, this streamlines thing and always makes things more efficient. Find your 80-20. This is the Pareto principle. And this is something that has pretty much been found to be true in nature, science, mathematics. And it states that 20% of your input gives you 80% of your results. Okay. And it's sort of like the old adage, getting your biggest bang for your buck. Okay. You want to find the 20% that gives you the biggest amount of result. Okay. In school, a lot of times people will say, oh, you should make note cards and that's how you study and all that kind of stuff. Okay, I was never able to do that. It was so time consuming to make the note cards, but it really wasn't a good return on my time. That's simply not the way that I learned. So I didn't do it. It wasn't part of my 20%. So part of that is just being mindful of what works for me and what doesn't. If it doesn't, drop it. Third, batch your activities and work in 20 to 90 minute segments and take breaks in between. Well, you saw you know, except for maybe the weekends, if you don't work on the weekends, those are the only times you might have a long expanse of time. Generally, you don't. And that's okay, because actually, what research and neuroscience has found is that our brains can't work for long expanses of time. You know, if we were computers, that would be great. It would work, but we're not. So what they found was our brain has the capacity to focus, I mean, really concentrated focus for about 90 minutes. And then whether we realize it or not, it's shuttling down for a little bit. So you ought to just go ahead and work with that. Okay? Work for 90 minutes and then take a break in between. If you try to power through, this is why I feel like you need to take a break at lunch. If you just try to power through that, you're not going to be working at top efficiency, which you have to do because you don't have that much time to fool around. Create a 20-minute list. So sometimes you will find just these little pockets of time. What can you do in 20 minutes? Okay, you could look at an outline of a chapter of a book. You might even be able to read a chapter of a book. You could go and look up one research article in 20 minutes. Just have a list of things that you can do in 20 minutes. And when you find that little pocket of time, click those little things off. Don't wait until you have 2 hours to look up the research and read it and outline it. You may never have that. Okay, so it's sort of that old saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Okay, so you need to kind of have ahead of time, what can I get done in 20 minutes? Create deadlines. This is Parkinson's law. You know, usually a task expands to the time available to do it. So if you have all day to do one thing, guess what? It may take you all day to do that one thing. And you can see you don't have all day to do one thing. So even if you don't have a deadline, set yourself arbitrary deadlines. And finally, and this was probably the biggest thing as far as, you know, finding balance in all this, is be adaptable to change. Okay, so you remember, let's see, let's look here. And I said, okay, you got 4 hours here. You could take those 4 hours to study for your class Y and your class X. But suppose your friends call you up and say, look, we're going to go see this new movie that just came out, or we're going to go eat at this restaurant or whatever, you know, and Tuesday night, you've established this routine, that's your night to study for these 2 classes, okay? But they call you and you say, no, I'm sorry, I can't because I have to study. No, go. Go and have friends. Remember, that's one of those things. If you enjoy that and that gives you energy, it renews you, you need that, okay? So be adaptable. However, here's what you have to do, though. If you do that, so you didn't get in these 4 hours here, all right, where are you going to find them? It may be that, okay, I might have to get up a little earlier in the morning. I might have to take my lunch hour, but all I've got is 2 hours. Well, guess what? That's all you've got, okay? So you take those 2 hours, you do the best you can in preparing for these classes. Anything that you might need to catch on, well, you might have to start an hour earlier on Sunday to catch up, okay? So that's why you wouldn't do that schedule, you know, every single week. You know, life's just not like that. Things are going to come up and you're going to have to be willing to change. But if you sort of know your general schedule that you're going with, it's very easy to make a change and it doesn't disrupt everything. Some derailers. One of the number ones is multitasking. Multitasking, I put a separate slide for this, really is its faults. Our brains cannot multitask, and research and neuroscience has now pretty much proven that. You will not be increasing your time by trying to read a chapter in a book and check your email and be looking at your phone, trying to do that all at the same time. You're not really multitasking. You can't do 2 effortful things at the same time. what you're doing is switching between all those tasks. What I really wanted to show you was this last statistic, what they found, that a mere 30-second interruption, it can take you 5 minutes to get back on track. Okay. 5 minutes doesn't sound very long, but if you have a 30-second interruption and that happens, 10 times in a day or 20 times in a day, all right, then you're talking a couple of hours. Okay, that's wasted and you don't really have that time. So don't try to do multitasking. Okay. Another derailer, trying to do it all. You won't be able to do it all. Okay. Again, this is where you make choices and trade-offs here, picking something from that list, number one, that only you can do, picking something from that list, number two, that you enjoy and that renew you. Going it alone. You really need assistance with this. That's why you don't want to just cut off all your friends or whatever because you're in school. You really do need support. It's going to be hard enough as it is. It will be definitely hard if you don't have any support. Even the people that are going through the program, they can provide a sense of support for you. Scrimping on sleep. Okay. When I was in law school, I always used to think, if I could just not sleep, I have this, 7 or 8 hours every day that I could study. All right, that was a losing proposition. Because you are going to be so busy, you will need to have supreme focus, and lack of sleep will diminish that focus. So at Stanford, they did research on sleep. They've done a lot of research on sleep. But one of them in particular I wanted to tell you about. They had 2 groups of students. They had group A study for an exam for 3 or 4 hours, and then they had them immediately take the exam. Group B studied the same amount of time, 3 or 4 hours for the exam, but they had that group sleep for 7 hours and then take the exam. Now, counterintuitively, the group that performed the best on the exam, it was group B, the one that slept. You would think it would be group A. They just studied it, and then they immediately go and they plop it out on the exam. But what researchers found is that in sleep is where memory is solidified. Okay, so that's if you have to cut any time, don't cut it from your sleep. And remember, there is time. I even built in 8 hours of sleep every night, and you still had 54 hours to fit in everything else. Okay? And finally, equating who you are with your grades. Okay? If you have enrolled in this program and you are moving through the program, you are a success. It doesn't, it doesn't, on one sense, doesn't really matter the grades that you are making. That doesn't say a lot about you. What it says is about your test-taking abilities, not you. There's this saying in law school that the A students became professors, the B students became judges, and the C students became rich. So you have to instead remember, get your value, from having a sense of achievement and accomplishment, and enrolling in a program and moving through it. That in and of itself is an accomplishment. Okay, I will open it up. Are there questions?
Okay, everyone. So there are a couple of different ways that we can do questions. And number one, I believe probably the easiest way would be to use the Q&A either down at the bottom of your screen or over on the side. You can type in your question. I'll read it out loud, and Kiz will give us the answer that we need. And also, you can use the webinar chat if you'd like. I believe that will chat to all of us, but if you would like to ask any questions in that question and answer box, I will again read those out loud and we'll get some answers. So let's go ahead and start with those questions. We've got about 10 minutes for questions, and Kiz is happy to answer anything that you need to.
Absolutely.
I do want to mention, if you feel like you've gotten all of the content that you need and now you are ready to balance all of the things in your life, you can go ahead and close out this webinar. We appreciate you coming, and we hope that you got all the information that you needed. We have webinars each week for the online BBA, so if you're interested in that, you can let us know. And if you are an enrolled student, we have another webinar just like this on Friday where you can ask questions for me, and hopefully I'll have some answers about getting started with class on Monday. So look out for that in your newsletter. But other than that, we're just going to wait on your questions. Thanks so much.